A warm welcome to Disky Talk with Luyolo. If you're tuning in for the very first time, I do ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you've been a part of this journey, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this episode. So, on today's episode, I discuss all things UEFA Champions League quarterfinal first leg between Manchester City and Bayern Munich. So, on today's episode, it is a tactical pre-match analysis of that mouth-watering encounter, which will then feature Pep Guardiola's men versus Thomas Tuchel's men. So, the blue team will represent Manchester City, and then the red team will represent Bayern Munich. So when you do have a look at it then, this is an encounter that has so many interesting storylines, from the type of quality that will be on display on the field, and then of course the two managers being Pep Guardiola and Thomas Tuchel, who we do know that in the past they have faced off each other, and if there is a manager who does have Pep's number in recent years, one would suggest that it is Thomas Tuchel. But it has been very competitive between the two men. We do know that Thomas Tuchel, when he was at Chelsea, he did manage to beat Pep Guardiola 3 times in a row. And the last time they met in the Champions League, then it was in the final, where Chelsea were able to beat Manchester City 1-0. However, let's go into this mouth-watering tactical pre-match analysis. So when you have a look at it then, Manchester City have been doing very well, and they've been very dominant. They've been scoring a lot of goals, and they've been playing some of the best football then in Europe. So when you have a look at Manchester City then, they're quite the tactically fluid and dynamic side by virtue of their standard formation being 4-3-3. However, once they get in possession of the ball, they then go to a 3-4-3 with a box midfield, which is something we'll go into as the episode progresses. So in goals then, they do start with Edison. At left back, they do start with Nathan Ake. And then as the left-sided centre-back, they do start with Ruben Diaz. And then as the right-sided centre-back, they do start with Akanji. And then at right-back, they do start with John Stones. Moving on then, right along within the heart of midfield, you do have Rodri, you've got Gundogan, you've got Kevin De Bruyne. Off the left-hand side, you do have Jack Grealish. Up front, you do have Erling Haaland. Off the right-hand side, then you have Riyad Mahrez. But I did mention then that this Manchester City side is tactically fluid and very dynamic with regards to their shape. So what happens then to this Manchester City side, and how then do they arrive to their box? So what is key to note then is that this Manchester City side is always looking to build up from deep. So from deep build-up play, Manchester City then are able then to institute that box. But how does that happen? So it goes then to a back three. So you'd have Akanji opening up there. You would have Diaz opening up there, and then, you'd have Ake opening up as the left back, Akanji then becoming the right back. And then what would happen is Stones then would invert into midfield. So with Stones then inverting into midfield, he forms a double pivot alongside Rodri. So then what you do have then here then is the traditional back four build up with Ake as the left back. Edison then acts as an auxiliary centre-back who can either play as the left-sided centre-back or the right-sided centre-back, depending on how the game progresses and which side does Diaz open up to. And then as the right-back, then you would have Akanji. So this is the shape then that you would see from Manchester City with regards to a build-up. It does become a 4-2 build-up. But what's quite interesting then is that their build-up then always has one extra man. So already they've created superiority, because what you'd normally see then is 2 centre-backs either side of the goalkeeper. That is the traditional build-up scheme. But with Manchester City, they're very dynamic. So you'd have Edison there, and then you'd have the double pivot there. So when you look at this then, what becomes key then is how then they're looking to invite the press, beat the press, progress the ball, look then to progress the ball to the far side winger who has been isolated, and oftentimes looks to either cut in or cut the ball back in, and then they look to score. So with this Manchester City side, they're able then to institute those overloads in a bid then to isolate. So they overload to isolate their far side winger, then creating that qualitative superiority in 1v1 situations with then their wingers. So when you have a look at it from this perspective then, teams then would be most likely looking then to press with two. So when teams then most likely look to press with two, that's what you would see. Rodri and Stones would be positioned just behind the first line of pressure with regards to how then they're trying to help this Manchester City side progress play. So like I did mention, the patterns that you would see from this Manchester City side with regards to their build-up scheme is that they are able to build up on one side, work the ball where they've overloaded one side, progress it, then look to switch then to the far side winger. They do that on the right side and they do that on the left side as well. However, when we move on then right along and have a look at them with regards to their second phase. So in second phase, this is where then it goes into a 3-2-5. So within first phase, what you do have with this Manchester City side, it does become a 4-box-3. So you've got 4 there, you've got your box, and you've got your 3. So all 11 players for Manchester City are very important with regards to them occupying the ball and looking then to create those superiorities. So when you move then to the second phase, you'd have your winger there, you'd have Erling Haaland, you have Mahrez. The wingers then would go high and wide with regards to being able to pin back the opposition back four and also then ensuring that they can pin then their respective fullbacks. The 2 10s then would move high up within our spaces, and then you'd have your double pivot there, you'd have Diaz there, you'd have Ake there, and then you'd have Akanji there, playing then as a right back. So this is the shape then that Manchester City would take up then within the second phase of play with regards to how they're looking to impose themselves. It does become a 3-2-5. So when you look at this then and what becomes important. So their box midfield then does offer them that numerical superiority within the heart of midfield, especially considering that many teams do tend to play with the midfield 3, just like this Bayern Munich team does. So with this then is that the 2 10s are able to get as high as possible within the half spaces, where then they are able then to ensure that they can support Haaland. So Haaland then isn't always as isolated, but they are still able then to maintain the width with the 2 wingers. Also then a key aspect of the 2 10s with regards to their positioning and their movement and how they look to occupy space. Sometimes what you will see then is that they do tend to go wider. What this does then is that it would often stretch the opposition midfielders, which then would create, so let me just move those up, which then would create that passing lane into Haaland. Sometimes what you will see then is that they are able then to come collect the ball in these deep wide pockets of space. Same thing then on the right hand side with regards to De Bruyne. When you move on then right along within the final third, the shape does remain the same, but now with Gundo and De Bruyne, they do go further up. So this is what you see then within the final third with regards to their shape. It is then becomes a very aggressive 3-2-5. So what becomes key then here with regards then to the wingers is how then they look to offer the width with regards to being able to stretch the back line. When they stretch the back line, that creates space then within the half spaces, and then for players then to be able to exploit that space. So that's what then you would see from this Manchester City side. So if it's on the left with Jack Grealish, that's what you would see. Same thing you'd see on the right then with regards to Riyad Mahrez. So I did mention that they do tend to overload to isolate. That's what you would see then if, for example, there's an overload on the left-hand side, and then what they're looking to do then is progress the ball with quick combination passes and then find Mahrez on the opposite side as the far side winger, who's able then to go 1v1 with his man, and then he's able then to cut the ball back. So they've scored a lot of goals then from those passing patterns with regards to overloading to isolate. And then when you move on then right along and have a look at the key players for this Manchester City side. So when you have a look at some of the key players for this Manchester City side, you are looking at John Stones. So when you look at John Stones, he's been very important for this Manchester City side as an inverted fullback with regards to what he's looking to offer them. So in possession, what John Stones does then is that he always creates an extra layer within build-up for this Manchester City side. And then when you move on further up the field, what he does then in between the lines and being able to ensure that Manchester City always have that numerical superiority. Also then with regards to his movement, because he does move laterally in between the lines with regards to looking to progress the ball for this Manchester City side. He's very, very good then within build-up phase, within the second phase as well. And then in the final third, he's also able then to ensure that he retains the ball very well whenever Manchester City then are looking to work the ball within those tight pockets of space. When you move on then right along Kevin De Bruyne. When you have a look at Kevin De Bruyne, then this is quite a special player for this Manchester City side with regards to his creativity. So with Kevin De Bruyne, what you do see from him then is that he does tend to often drift to the wide areas whenever then central pockets of space are quite congested. This is where he tends to find space and is able then to play those crosses into the box. He also does this on the left-hand side. And then up front, definitely Erling Haaland. He's been the man in form for this Manchester City side. He scored so many goals for this Manchester City side this season. However, when you have a look at Manchester City then without the ball. So without the ball, one of the things that Manchester City are looking to do is press aggressively. How do they do that? So when they look to press then, the shape does go back then to a 4-2-3-1 actually. So this is the shape that they look to press with, and sometimes what you would see then is that you'd even see a 4-4-2 sort of high block and pressing shape, very compact with regards to how they're looking to press. Sometimes what you would see then is even then a 4-1-3-2, whenever then one of the center mids is able then to ensure that they can jump. So you'd have Gundogan looking then to jump and looking then to occupy the opposition defensive midfielder. Then John Stones would go into that right back position. Sometimes what you will see then is that they really go aggressive. So sometimes you would see even a case where then you'd have Mahrez looking to go high up. And if Mahrez goes really high up with regards to looking to press, so sometimes let's just open up the opposition, and you find that Kevin De Bruyne has gone onto the goalkeeper like that. Mahrez would be looking then to press the centre back. Then you'd have John Stones looking to come high up. So on the right hand side, you do see John Stones being very aggressive with his press. Even with Ake, sometimes he does become quite aggressive. So this Manchester City side are really looking to press as high as possible and as aggressive as possible. When you move on then right along, what do they look like then without the ball when they sit within their own half? So within their own half, when they do sit, they do go then to a very compact 4-2-3-1 block. So this is what you would see from this Manchester City side. And when they sit without the ball, this is what you would see with regards to that. Sometimes then it does become a 4-4-2. They become very, very compact with regards to their shape and ensuring that they can deny the opposition space in between the lines where they're looking to break them down. And another thing then with Manchester City is that they're quite effective when it comes to offensive transitions, because they've also got quick players and players who are very good in transition with regards to the decision making and the weight of the pass as well. So that is Manchester City then with regards to what do they look like, their strengths, their weaknesses, and what they're really good at with regards to how then they look to impose themselves with regards to the weaknesses. So Manchester City have a very slow defensive line, and also then when it comes then to those counter attacks and offensive transitions from the opposition, they do tend to be quite open, as they do tend to commit a lot of numbers going forward. So a lot of the times they do become quite open and they are susceptible to a counter attack. That is where you see then Pep Guardiola trying to ensure then with his 3-2-5 that he at least always has 5 numbers behind the ball. But sometimes it does become quite open, because then you'd see Rodri or Stones a bit pushed up further, and also then with their slow defensive line. So coming up against the Bayern Munich that has very quick wingers and quick players, that is something then to watch out for, and where Bayern Munich could actually look then to exploit this Manchester City side. So that is Manchester City then, with Stones being a key player with regards to how then he looks to invert within the heart of midfield and offer them then that extra layer within build-up, and how then he creates that numerical superiority. With De Bruyne then, how creative he is, his eye for goal, his movement then off the ball, how then he looks to occupy in between the lines, within the half spaces, just to the wide channel. He pretty much has a free role for this Manchester City side. And then Erling Haaland up front with regards to the number of goals that he scored for this Manchester City side. When you move on then, right along and have a look at some of the players that could always make an impact off the bench for this Manchester City side. So you do have Bernardo Silva, who's a very good player, who's very versatile, and can pretty much slot into any position that Pep wants him to slot into within the field. A player then who's been very key for this Manchester City side. You do also then have Alvarez up front, who's been doing very well. Then in the absence of Erling Haaland, whenever then he's not been available. You do also have Phil Foden if he is fit. So those are some of the players that can always look to come off the bench for this Manchester City side and look to make an impact. When you move on then right along, let's have a look at Bayern Munich. So when you have a look at Bayern Munich and how they've been doing, so we do know that they've appointed Thomas Tuchel. He's been at the helm for 3 games. He started very well against Borussia Dortmund, where they were able to beat them then. And then he did then struggle within the cup, where he was knocked out against Freiburg at home. Then he went away from home and played against Freiburg, and they managed then to beat them 1-0. So with Thomas Tuchel then, he is quite a tactically versatile man, and a man then who does also look then to instill dominance in various ways. So he's very fluid with regards to how he approaches the games. We do know that 3 games is a small sample size, but we have seen some indications of what he is trying to do early within his tenure. So when you look at it then, he has favored a 4-2-3-1 system. So in goals, you do have Sommer. At right back, you have Pavard. As the right side at centre back, you've got Upamecano. As the left side at centre back, you've got De Ligt. And then at left back, you've got Davies. But we also do know that Cancelo is also another option in either one of these positions. So I do foresee Cancelo coming into this game against Manchester City, playing as a right back. And then you'd have Davis there. Moving on then right along within the heart of midfield, you've got Kimmich and then you've got Goretzka. But against Freiburg, the last time out, he did start with Musiala within the double pivot alongside Kimmich. And then you've got Müller as the 10. Off the right-hand side, you do then have Coleman. Off the left-hand side, you've got Leroy Sané. Up front, you've got Choupo-Moting. But within the offensive areas, this Bayern Munich side have so many options because there's Gnabry. Do you know that there's also Mane as well, who can start, and they can start in either one of these front 3 positions, being from the right, up top, or from the left-hand side. And another key component then of Thomas Tuchel's tenure so far has been his wingers with regards to how high and wide they stay. So with these wingers, they are also inverted wingers. Sometimes they do tend to sit then on their traditional sides with regards to the foot that they favor. But when you have a look at this Bayern side and what they're trying to do then. So with Bayern then, they are looking to build up from deep as well. But with their build up, the difference then is that you'd have Sommer, who would become central. Then you'd have the 2 center backs on either side. And then you'd have Kimmich looking to drop into there. Then you'd have Goretzka looking to push up into the half space. Then you'd have Müller there as well. The wingers maintain the width where they stay high and wide. So that is what then Bayern Munich would look like then with regards to how then they are looking to build up. So it does sort of become a 3-3 build up with regards to how then they're looking to progress the ball from the first phase. And within the first phase then, instead of having 2 like Manchester City's double pivot, they've got 1 in Kimmich who's looking to collect, the 2 8s moving further up within the half spaces then to ensure that they can offer those options. When you move then into the second phase with regards to Bayern Munich's shape, so this is what you see. So the wingers go high and wide to offer that width, and then the 8s go into the half spaces as high as possible, and then you'd have your striker going in there. So like I did mention, there's Choupo-Moting, there's Gnabry who's also played there, Mane can also play there, Müller can also play there. So Thomas Tuchel does have various options with regards to his profile at 9. And then when you move on, then you'd have Kimmich there, who then sits at the base. Then you'd have the fullbacks there, and then you'd have the center backs there. So this is what then you would see from this Bayern Munich side with regards to their shape within second phase and within the final third as well. They then go then to this 2-3-5 as opposed to Manchester City's 3-2-5. They are a 2-3-5 side. So what you would see then is that you can also look at it sort of from a 4-1-5 perspective. Then you'd have Kimmich there at the base. So this is what they're trying to do. And with this Bayern Munich side then, with regards to how then they are looking to utilize their wingers. So with them then, it's also then being about being able then to create those qualitative superiority situations where you've got the winger high and wide in 1v1 situations, especially when you consider then that they've got Coleman, who's very quick, who's very good at beating his man on the outside, delivering a very good cross. On the left-hand side, they've got Sané as well, but they can also become inverted. So they are very good with regards to their 1v1 ability. That is then their speciality. So that is what they look to do. But with this Bayern Munich side, then they look to engage the wingers a lot quicker through diagonal balls. So Bayern Munich then are a lot direct and a lot more penetrative with regards to how then they look to utilize possession. So Manchester City have a much more slower and patient build-up. With Bayern Munich, they look to play a lot quicker, engage the wingers. The wingers then are able then to ensure that they can beat their men in the wide areas, then bring the ball back in. So they're quite similar then in that regard, but the difference then being with Bayern Munich, what they look to do then is engage the wingers a lot quicker. And then when you also then have a look at this Bayern Munich side, when you have a look at then some of their strengths. So some of their strengths then is that they're very good with regards to offensive transitions because of the speed that they have. They also look quite good then when it comes to those offensive set plays, especially considering some of the players that they have. When you look at De Ligt and you look at Upamecano, you look at Goretzka, these are players then who are very good then within the opposition box with regards to looking then to finish off those set pieces. Kimmich then becomes quite key when it comes to those set pieces because then he is a player then with great technical ability with regards to what he can offer from those deliveries. And then when you then have a look at some of Bayern Munich's key players, so we'll start then with Kimmich within the heart of midfield. So like I did mention, he does act as the deep laying playmaker where he is looking to ensure that he can progress the ball for this Bayern Munich side, and he can look then to put this Bayern Munich side into a great spell of possession and fluidity as well. Also key when it comes to playing those diagonal passes whenever then he's looking to engage his wingers. And then Sané would be very key, especially when you look at his speed and in relation then to Manchester City's slow defensive line. So this is where Sané then can look to exploit this Manchester City side because he is very quick, and also then with regards to his ability to also score goals as well. So he's very quick, very skillful, creative, and he can score goals as well. So those are the key players for this Bayern Munich side. However, without the ball, what do they look like? So this Bayern Munich side without the ball, what you do see from them is that they then tend to sit in a very compact 4-2-3-1 block. So this is what you would see from this Bayern Munich side. So sometimes it would be a 4-2-3-1 block. Sometimes what you will see then is that it can pretty much become a 4-1-4-1 where then Müller drops into that right-sided half space within midfield. Then you'd have Goretzka there. With this Bayern Munich side, they are also looking to press aggressively. Sometimes then they do press with a 4-2-3-1 shape, where then they'll be looking to press with one. Then Müller would be there. Sometimes they do look to press with a two-man press like that. So it's going to be very interesting with regards to how they look to approach this Manchester City side, especially considering then that Manchester City have this double pivot of Rodri and Stones, and how then these two look to utilize their cover shadow, ensuring then that Manchester City aren't able to seamlessly and fluidity and be able to have that fluidity with regards to they build up through the central areas. So that is Bayern Munich then with regards to what they're looking to do, their strengths, and when you have then a look at Bayern Munich then with regards to their weaknesses. So when you have a look at this Bayern Munich defensive line, so far they have struggled with regards to managing space in behind and in between the centre back. So we've seen opposition being able to make those runs where then they are able to break that defensive line. So which then will be quite interesting, especially considering how this Manchester City side play with regards to being able to open up the half spaces, having those runs, penetrative runs within those half spaces, and looking then to exploit that. With Manchester City, you've got Riyad Mahrez, you've got De Bruyne, who are also quite lethal from set pieces as well. But like I did mention then with this Bayern Munich side, there's so much quality. So if the 11 I mentioned didn't start, then you always do have Gnabry, you've got Mane as well. Those are other options. You've got Musiala as well, who can also start for this Bayern Munich side. However, at home, do let me know, what do you make of this mouth-watering UEFA Champions League encounter between Manchester City versus Bayern Munich, where we will see then Pep Guardiola taking on Thomas Tuchel yet again. Thank you very much for tuning in to yet another special episode of Diski Talk with Luyolo. Signing out.